Now, Mr. Holder's blatant lie is driving additional lawmakers to demand yet again that he step down from his post. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte, who co-sponsored a bill last year calling for the AG to resign, told Newsmax.com that he continues to believe that it's time for Holder to go. Now, that trend is likely to continue in the days, the weeks, and even months ahead. Joining me now with reaction to this scandal and much more, New York Times bestselling author Ann Coulter is back. Ann, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Good to be here.
All right. Well, first of all, let's start with the news organizations that are going to allow this off-the-record session. And what is your reaction to that?
It's strange, but I guess, Politico doesn't care if their emails were being read because they were all going to the White House anyway. All their calls were going directly to the White House. I mean, I agree with you. What is the point of this? If it had to do with national security, as often happened during the Bush administration, what happened was the president himself, the Secretary of Defense, sometimes congressmen like anti-war Democrat John Murtha, would call the head of, for example, the New York Times directly, the head of the Washington Post, explain that this is a national security issue. Please don't run the stories. And just by the way, the Washington Post and the New York Times ran them anyway. Here, I think it's quite obvious that the reason Eric Holder wants to meet with members of the press is just to schmooze them and BS them. So I don't really know the point. I mean, unless I do think Fox News should consider sending James Rosen's parents
well,
to that meeting.
Their phone records were apparently got to as well. But is this not a case of selective moral outrage, meaning, there were a lot of national security leaks when it benefited the president and the administration. For example, drone strikes, the details of the bin Laden raid, New York Times, and
yes,
right. I mean, so when it's convenient, it's not so outrageous, is it?
No, I mean, manifestly, there was no national security involved here. We have gotten the details. On the AP, for example, the White House didn't want to be scooped on a story they were about to announce 1 hour later. So there's no national security. They just wanted to be in control of the story. And as you say, Obama, with his big mouth blathering about the bin Laden raid, ended up getting SEAL Team 6 killed a few weeks later. You're supposed to just come out, if you're going to say anything, and say bin Laden is dead, not be giving details of the operation.
For the movie. Yeah. For the movie edition.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you this.
And I mean, Holder is,
All right, because Holder, look, we got into this a long time ago on this program, perjury, subornation of perjury, a double standard that exists for citizens versus some elected officials. But when he said before Congress, this is not something I've ever been involved in, heard of, or would think would be wise policy, and then we find out he's signing the affidavit in the case of Rosen and going before a judge, is that lying before Congress? Is that a crime?
It appears to be, and I do think whether or not Holder resigns, I could imagine Obama has certainly dumped other friends and officials off when their existence inconvenienced him. But whether or not Holder is fired or resigns, I mean, I do think this is kind of a blindingly obvious case for a special prosecutor. Often the cases in the past, special prosecutors have been used just because there's a dispute between the legislative branch and the executive branch, and it's the Congress asserting their authority. Here, in every one of these scandals, in Benghazi, in the IRS, in the spying on journalists, this is the administration against the American people. And no, you cannot trust the Attorney General to investigate himself. This is the precise case for a special prosecutor. And look, Congress has done a perfectly good job in bringing out some of the facts, but that isn't their job. It looks like crimes have been committed, and very strongly, the only question is how high it went. You do need a criminal prosecution, and that isn't Congress's job. Congress needs to be blocking amnesty, passing a new immigration law so we're not letting in welfare recipients and terrorists. They have their own job to do. This is a case precisely designed for a special prosecutor. Oh, just one other thing that Congress ought to be doing now in connection with these scandals, now that we see how thoroughgoing the corruption is at the IRS, and it is not just the Cincinnati office, it was coming out of many offices well beyond the Cincinnati office, as we now know, Obamacare, this incredibly crucial law, I mean, bad law, but it's going to be interfering with a lot of people's lives in something that is important to everyone, health care. Congress at least ought to pass a law suspending the turning over of Obamacare operations to the IRS while it is so rife with corruption. That is a beautiful law that I think it would be very hard for even Democrats to vote against right now. Well,
you mentioned public opinion a couple of times. A Quinnipiac poll out today, 76 to 17% people support a special prosecutor. More interestingly, 63 to 30 Democrats support appointing a special prosecutor. Let me ask you, Ted Cruz said today Obama does not respect the First, Second, Fourth, and Fifth Amendments. Is that about right?
I so love Ted Cruz.
Is he your new Chris Christie now? You want him for president?
Well, he's very good on the amnesty question. And as you know, I'm a single-issue voter on amnesty. No, he's absolutely right. I mean, and that is why we need a special prosecutor. This is not a little dispute between Congress and, oh, somebody lied to Congress. It's not a little corruption case of someone, I don't know, going to a hockey game paid for by a lobbyist. We are talking about the IRS abusing its authority. And by the way, one other abuse, one that isn't talked about quite as much, is your pal Austin Goolsbee, apparently privy to the private tax records of Koch Industries, of various other groups. He's deleted those tweets. He needs an investigation. That is against the law to have private access to private IRS records.
All right, we have a special tomorrow night of people, individuals, live audience show of those groups of people that were targeted. Nobody else in the media seems to want to talk to those people, so we're going to do that tomorrow. And always love your insight. Thanks for being with us.
Great to see you, Sean.
All right.